swing vote. House Democrats approve the Build Back Better agenda. Where it goes from here. White House reaction. Why the Biden administration still claims the entire plan is paid for. RCIA name change. What the pathway to entering the church will be called if the Vatican approves the proposal. And preventing child labor. How a Holy See conference seeks to make a difference. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, November 19th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. At historic day on Capitol Hill, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Build Back Better Act, bringing it one step closer to becoming law. The bill contains much of President Joe Biden's economic agenda. We have team coverage tonight, including White House reaction, but we begin with Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales.
After months of infighting by House Democrats and despite an 8.5-hour speech by House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy last night, the Build Back Better Act passed the House.
The yeas are 220, the nays are 213. The Build Back Better bill is passed.
Democratic leaders say from free universal child care to paid family leave to climate change, the impact is massive.
This bill is so historic. Not for next year, the year after, but for decades to come. It will make America a better land, a land of greater opportunity.
An opportunity, Democrats tell me, for those living in the U.S. illegally to become American citizens.
There's no such thing as amnesty for immigrants. This bill says you can stay here for 5 years if you obey the law, if you continue to obey the law, if you continue to pay your taxes, and you have a job.
But Republicans tell me this bill burdens future generations.
Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will go insolvent in the next 4 years. Now you've added all of this on top of it.
Republicans add it hands over millions to China and its electric car battery industry.
China is virtually one of the only countries in the world that's mining lithium, that mines cobalt, that mines rare earth minerals. So that's where you're going to get the batteries from.
What's not in the bill? Any pro-life provisions, an issue House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was quick to point out to me prior to the vote.
Madam Speaker, the Helms and Hyde Amendment are still not in the reconciliation bill, but weeks ago, Chairman Jeffries said that anything is on the table. Is that still the position?
It's not in the bill. It's not in the bill. Thank you for your question. It's not in the bill.
But what about Catholic Senator Joe Manchin, who said the bill without the Hyde Amendment is dead on arrival?
You never get everything you want, and I would just encourage my colleagues in the Senate, Mr. Manchin and others, to look at the best interests of the country.
The bill now heads to the Senate, where it faces an uncertain future. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
President Joe Biden applauds the passage of his Build Back Better agenda. For months, he has touted what it'll do for the nation, claiming that it's fully paid for. But right after the House approved the measure, the president, who for a brief period of time today was not actually the president, released a statement. White House correspondent Owen Jensen explains. Owen?
That's right, Tracy. Good evening to you. President Joe Biden briefly, about an hour and a half, transferred power to Vice President Kamala Harris today when the president underwent a routine colonoscopy at Walter Reed. As for his reaction to the passage in the House of Build Back Better, here it is.
As President Joe Biden visited Walter Reed for his first routine physical since becoming president, his party was celebrating the House of Representatives passing Build Back Better, his key legislative priority now halfway to his desk for a signature. The White House press secretary told reporters,
when we look to getting the Build Back Better agenda passed, to the impact it's going to have on lowering child care, lowering elder care, the cost of elder care, lowering the cost of health care, these are all costs on families that impact what they're able to afford.
President Biden released a statement today thanking House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House members who voted in favor, and saying he looks forward to it passing the Senate as soon as possible so it can sign it into law.
The president calls the House vote a giant step forward in carrying out my economic plan to create jobs, reduce costs, make our country more competitive, and give working people and the middle class a fighting chance. And the president added his often repeated line, "It's fully paid for." Friday's vote came after the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimated that the package would worsen federal deficits by $160 billion over the coming decade. When asked about the dollars.
So our assessment and the assessment by many economists out there is that there will be savings over 10 years that will actually reduce the deficit.
Americans for Tax Reform says the Build Back Better plan will saddle Americans with the highest personal income tax rate in the developed world and the highest capital gains tax rate since the 1970s. The group calls it a violation of Biden's middle-class tax pledge to oppose any and all tax hikes on Americans making less than $50K.
Now, also regarding Build Back Better, tonight, faith-based preschools are very worried that if the bill passes the Senate, they could ultimately be left out of that huge pot of money to do things like renovate their facilities. I asked the White House press secretary about that today, but she ignored my multiple questions. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
A Wisconsin jury finds Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty on all counts, including homicide following a deadly shooting during riots last year in Kenosha, Wisconsin. It led to emotional scenes in the courtroom.
As to the fourth count of the information, Anthony Huber, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the fifth count of the information, Gage Grosskreutz, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
The 18-year-old shot and killed 2 men and wounded a third during a riot last year. He said he acted in self-defense and was facing life in prison. And joining us now is Tim Carney, Washington Examiner, senior political columnist, and American Enterprise Institute senior fellow. Tim, welcome back. Great to see you as always. We have a lot to talk about, but first, I'd like to get your reaction to the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict.
Well, it really is an incredibly divisive moment. You have politicians saying Kyle Rittenhouse was a vigilante, a white supremacist. Joe Biden even implied during his campaign that Rittenhouse was a white supremacist, issuing a video with that implication. But Biden came out afterwards and said, you know, we have to respect the decision of the jury. The American people don't have to respect the decision of the jury, and a lot of people are going to be very upset. My own personal view from following the trial was that it seemed that the defense made a much stronger case, and certainly it would have been hard to say beyond a reasonable doubt that he was guilty, and the idea that he was defending himself seemed obvious to me, especially after the trial, but there was so much loaded in this. Were these riots or were these protests for racial justice? Was he a vigilante or was he somebody there who just had to act in self-defense? You would think that we could agree on facts. We can't. I think that there's going to be a lot of unrest going forward. A lot of people very upset, feeling that justice wasn't done, and a lot of people upset that the charges were brought at all.
You know, Tim, you mentioned people weighing in on this, including President Biden. It really has garnered a lot of attention in the media, this case. Some actually even drawing parallels between Kyle Rittenhouse and Nicholas Sandmann, including Sandmann himself, who actually wrote an article about it for the Daily Mail. He wrote in part, quote, "The attacks on Kyle came from the national news media just as they came from me." I'd like to get your thoughts on that. And do you think this case was tried in the media before it actually went to trial?
It's exactly right. And there's an irony there, too, because the New York Times actually did excellent journalism in the days after the events in Kenosha. And if you watch the videos that the New York Times put out a couple days later, you would have come to probably the same conclusion I did, which is it was unfortunate he was there, but in every moment he had to defend himself. But for the year since then, so many people ended up misinformed. And I've kept track of how many people believed that he carried his rifle across state lines. That is not true. The rifle was in Wisconsin when he picked it up. There are people even who assumed that Rittenhouse's victims were black men because of the way it was cast as a story of racial injustice, is a term that the Associated Press used. So yeah, the media did not do a good job of explaining to people what was happening, and so people ended up uninformed, and I think that's behind a lot of the anger at this verdict.
Yeah, I want to move on now to some other big news today. The House passed the Build Back Better plan with just one Democrat voting against it. That was Jared Golden from Maine. His big issue dealt with the raising of the SALT cap, but you know, he's not the only one who has issues with this multi-trillion-dollar bill as it goes to the Senate. Tim, how do you think this will eventually all shake out?
Well, as was mentioned earlier, Joe Manchin, one of the two sort of swing Democratic senators, says that he would need to see Hyde Amendment language put in there protecting taxpayers from funding abortions. And Kyrsten Sinema, the other swing Democratic senator, has never been totally clear about what she needs. I think it's too valuable to the Democrats. I think they will cut deals on it, and I think that in the end, what you're going to see is a lot of the in the House, a lot of Democrats, either the moderates or the liberals, sort of swallow a bitter pill to pass something that isn't as big as they had hoped. This is a massive raft of legislation that does a ton of things. Paring it down a little and adding a Hyde Amendment could probably get Manchin and Sinema. So a smaller version of this passing is I think, the best bet right now.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Not a whole lot of time left, about a minute or so, Tim. But I'm wondering what other stories you're keeping your eye on and also what you're working on recently.
Well, so I have started working on a book actually about how the birth rate in the U.S. is collapsing and how that's due, I think, primarily to cultural factors, that we don't have a family-friendly enough society. And this actually sort of ties in with the Kenosha story a bit, that 3 of the men involved, including Rittenhouse, grew up without fathers. And so restoring communities, restoring families, that this will sort of turn us around. And one of the ways we can measure that will be millennials maybe will start having babies because they haven't been doing it so far.
Yeah, Tim, very interesting point, and hope to talk to you about that in the future. Thanks again, Tim, for your analysis. Always appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, the U.S. Bishops' Conference is attempting to change the name of the process by which individuals enter the Catholic Church. At the recently concluded meetings in Baltimore, the bishops approved the name Order of Christian Initiation for Adults, or OCIA. The change still needs Vatican approval, though. It previously was called the Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults. Well, the church in Italy held its first National Day of Prayer for victims and survivors of sexual abuse. The Archdiocese of Milan celebrated Mass and Eucharistic adoration yesterday in the city's cathedral. Other dioceses say that they will use special prayers written by the Italian Bishops' Conference on Sunday. Austria is announcing a combined national coronavirus lockdown and vaccine mandate.
Lange Zeit war es politischer Konsens, dass wir in diesem Land keine Impfpflicht wollen.
Austria's chancellor says the new restrictions are necessary despite popular opposition. A 10-day lockdown begins on Monday. A vaccine mandate takes effect February 1st. Austria reported a daily record of more than 15,000 new cases today. South Korea has scrambled its air defenses in response to unannounced flyovers by Russian and Chinese jets. South Korea's military reported 7 Russian and 2 Chinese aircraft which crossed through its eastern coastal defensive airspace. Both Beijing and Moscow accounted for the flights as routine joint exercises. Anthropologists are celebrating a new exhibition of rare historic finds in Morocco. It includes a display of ancient shell beads, which were possibly a necklace. They're estimated to date back to 150,000 years ago and appear to suggest early human communication. The artifacts were discovered by an international team in caves located near Morocco's Atlantic coast. Coming up, search for the truth. What Pope Francis told members of the Swedish Academy. And Vatican Conference. Learn about the push to prevent child labor. Pope Francis warns about social media, including its aggressive tones. He says online communication, quote, risks replacing dialogue with a welter of monologues. The Holy Father shared these remarks today at the Vatican with the Swedish Academy, which awards the Nobel Prize in literature. Well, earlier today, the Vatican held a conference addressing ways to end child labor. Eradicating child labor, building a better future, examine ways to end the practice of forcing children to work, often for little or no money. According to the Holy See, more than 160 million children around the world are the victims of forced labor. Joining us now from Rome is Marta Pedrajas, coordinator of the section Faith and Development for the Dicastery for promoting integral human development. Marta, thank you so much for your time today. Wonderful to see you. Can you tell us more about the conference and also what Pope Francis had to say to the participants?
Thank you so much, Tracy. This is a privilege for me to be here with all of you and to share the good news that we have already lived today here in Rome. We have organized this webinar, this conference on eradicating child labor in coordination with the FAO and the Holy See permanent observer to the bodies of the FAO. And the first part of the day, we have started with the audience with the Pope, and he has highlighted the idea of the importance of combating, eradicating child labor because of the damage of the labor do for the children. No? The children cannot be prevented from dreaming, from playing, for all the things that the children must do in a normal life. No? When a children is damaged, the adult is damaged, and the society in general is damaged.
And Marta, I'm curious, I'm wondering why the progress towards the elimination of child labor has stalled for the first time in about 20 years. Why do you think that is, and what led to the reversal of that downward trend?
Well, the trend is increasing because of the poverty, the inequalities, and the vulnerability of the families. The drama of the child labor start with the family, no? With the family suffering, with the families struggling, the children are struggling. And with the pandemic, the last 2 years, the impact has been very, very, very serious, no? In some of the most vulnerable societies and in the countries that have suffered more the impact of the pandemic, because they don't have social protection policies, they don't have safety nets, they don't have other measures to defend, no, or to be protected from the poverty or vulnerability. So the struggling of the family has put the children in danger, and these children, especially the girls, also have suffered violence, have suffered poverty, and has also put into the trafficking, exploitation, and slavery.
Marta, not a whole lot of time left, but wondering, could you talk to us about how child labor actually impacts children's dignity?
Yes, of course. It's what the Pope also has emphasized this morning, no? Because when the children cannot enjoy the fundamental rights, their dignity is very damaged, no? They are robbed, they are stealed from not only from playing, dreaming, but also from the very, very basic, like access to health, access to education, access to nutrition, for us would be a normal life, but for them it's a dreaming of life, no? So we really need to take into account that for us adults, when we suffer, we have other mechanisms to defend us, but the children don't have. They are very vulnerable. They need the parents, they need the caregivers. For instance, with the pandemic, 5 million children have lost a parent or a caregiver, so they are really in danger because they have lost their reference, and not only for losing the reference, but also because they cannot enjoy the fundamental rights.
Marta, thank you so much for speaking to us. We really appreciate it. Marta Pedrajas, coordinator of the section Faith and Development for the Dicastery for promoting integral human development. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Up next, an award for the former head of the Knights of Columbus. We'll explain. And Elizabeth Lev tells us about her new book on St. Joseph. Religious Freedom Institute presented its Defender of Religious Freedom Award to the recently retired Supreme Knight of the Knights of Columbus, Carl Anderson.
You're the true heroes of religious liberty, and you've done so much to protect our liberty that, and that of others around the world, I am honored to be associated with you, and most especially that you would consider me worthy to be a colleague.
The award recognizes Carl Anderson for his leadership to aid persecuted Christians globally. Congratulations. Well, at the White House today, 2 Thanksgiving turkeys have received the annual presidential pardon.
With the power vested in me as President of the United States, I pardon you. I pardon you this Thanksgiving. Go ahead, say something. There you go.
This year marks the first time President Joe Biden has bestowed the ceremonial reprieve. Peanut butter and jelly have a home awaiting them at Purdue University's Animal Science Research and Education Center. And finally, tonight, a new book called The Silent Night does a deep dive into how St. Joseph is depicted at various points in history and in different artistic mediums. The book's release coincides with the conclusion in December of the Year of St. Joseph. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of speaking with the book's author. And joining me now to discuss is Elizabeth Lev, author of The Silent Night. Liz, welcome back. Great to see you. First off, congratulations on the new book. That is wonderful. Can you tell us more about it and why you decided to write a book about St. Joseph?
Well, I think the Holy Father gave us a magnificent opportunity to really revisit and rethink about this amazing St. Joseph. And I took advantage of that opportunity during the course of the Year of St. Joseph and started looking at how many images there are in the history of art of St. Joseph.
Yeah, and can you tell us, in that process, what did you learn about him that maybe you didn't know before?
Well, what drove me to write the book was that I had no idea that there was such a variety of images. There's Joseph the old man, there's Joseph the young man, there's Joseph, a kind of goofy guy in the corner drying diapers, there's Joseph who looks like St. Peter. The amount of imagery that the church has produced over St. Joseph over the years is really extraordinary. And together, looking at those images, we can see the history of the church playing out and how St. Joseph was like a knight in shining armor riding in to assist the church whenever it found itself in difficulty with teaching or historical events.
Yeah, and Liz, I'm curious, what is your favorite depiction of St. Joseph in art? Did you find something new that you hadn't seen before?
Well, I found lots of new images. So I found these really fascinating Northern European images where you see Joseph, he's like cutting up his shoes in the corner, which has to do with the relic of Joseph's hosen that was found in the 11th century. But my personal favorite, and I can't help it, I live in Rome, I'm kind of a Roman, and I love the Baroque. My personal favorite is Guido Reni's St. Joseph and the Infant Jesus, where he's holding the baby. And he looks like an older man, but his absolute absorption, the way he's focused on that child. And then Jesus reaches up to play with his fuzzy beard. So you have solemnity, you have this grandeur, but at the same time, you have this intensely personal and intimate moment.
Wonderful. The release of your book coincides, as we know, with the Year of St. Joseph, which is drawing to a close next month. In what ways is St. Joseph still relevant today?
I think St. Joseph is more relevant than ever today. I mean, in this book, it turns out that Joseph has been relevant over the past 1,000 years for virtually every crisis the church faced, whether it's a problem of the teaching on marriage or a problem of fatherhood or problem of labor. But today, in our modern age, I think what Pope Francis underlined in Patris Corde, his letter on St. Joseph, this idea of creative courage, where in a difficult world, we have difficult problems, and that the St. Josephs, our side of St. Joseph, working quietly, working not necessarily on the world stage, but trying to find creative ways in which we face the challenges of our day. I think the opportunities to really expand our devotion to Joseph and, of course, create new art are endless.
And Liz, before I let you go, I'm curious, why the title, The Silent Night, and anything else that you would like to share with our viewers about your new book.
Well, I think I named it The Silent Night because of the fact that there's a beautiful, beautiful image. It's a play, obviously, on the words and the Christmas and the Nativity and the presence of St. Joseph in the Nativity. But I found this image. It's a carved capital from the top of a column in the Cathedral of Autun, where you see Joseph dressed up in medieval knight's armor, bringing Mary and Jesus to safety. And this idea of this quiet heroism of St. Joseph was really what I wanted to underscore in the title. And the other thing I think to say is just, it's a wonderful opportunity looking through these images, realizing how much art assists our understanding of faith. It helps us to get to know our saints better and our own story better. So the one thing I make is a plug for people to love art and the history of art.
Well, Liz, thank you again for speaking with us. Congratulations on the book, and God bless you and all that you do. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.